I had a secret at that time, and this is what I always try to tell guys that I talk to in early recovery is like, secrets, you're only as sick as your secrets. I had a secret, and I was telling people in my recovery circle 90% of the truth, and I was keeping that 10% of the truth back here. I was telling them that I was on TRT with the doctor, which is testosterone replacement therapy. All these stories, I'm doing it properly. I'm not relapsed. It's not a mood or mind-altering substance. Dangerous, dangerous stuff, man. I never thought I would have relapsed. I never thought that I would relapse that way, right? But addiction is cunning, baffling, and powerful for me, and patient, right?
This is Rock Bottom with Ryan. No sugarcoating, no filters. The pain, the chaos, the truth. No bullshit. Just recovery.
Sober Strong apparel isn't just lifestyle wear, it's battle gear. We rep sobriety like a badge of honor, and every piece you throw on says you're part of the crew that doesn't back down. Every order fuels recovery with 10% donated to treatment facilities. Hit SoberStrongApparel.com and use code ROCKBOTTOM at checkout for 10% off. Stay sober, stay true, rep the crew.
All right, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom with Ryan and Rachel, here with co-host Rachel Sereni, and we've got a guest today named Anthony. How you doing, Anthony?
Good, guys. How are you? Thanks so much for having me. I love talking recovery, and I'm happy to be here, so thank you.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. So, Anthony, would you want to kind of go into a little bit about your background, childhood was like, and what was your drug of choice and all that stuff?
Yeah, sure. You know, it's funny. My talk has changed over the years. I've done a few of these now, and I'm no stranger to relapse. You know, I'm no stranger to hard drugs. I'm no stranger to, you know, crossing moral boundaries. And I think as I've progressed in recovery, what I've shared about has changed a little bit. So, I mean, the thing that I'll say about my childhood, because, you know, my childhood was great. It doesn't affect the fact that I ended up using drugs or alcohol. I had a really good childhood. Didn't make me an alcoholic, didn't make me an addict. But what I will say is I learned to lie at a young age, right? So I had a lot of consequences growing up, you know, strict Italian family. And that was like, you know, the word character defect comes up when I think about this, because it still affects me to this day, right? Like, I am constantly riddled with this need to lie about stupid things for no reason. And that progressed throughout my addiction and my alcoholism, right? You know, almost getting high off of secrets. That was like my thing for a long time, was like, I had a secret life over here of doing cocaine. And then I would put on this mask and be this person around my parents, my friends, and my family. And I got a rush from it. It was almost like, I lived a double life, right? So I came into recovery originally in 2015. So 10 years ago, I came in, I was 23, forced to go to rehab. My parents gave me an ultimatum. You know, I was using cocaine. I couldn't stop. Drinking was a part of my story as well. But for me, the stimulants were really that was my love for a long time, right? It helped me escape my thoughts. It helped me quiet the brain down. That was my love. That was my solution for a long time, right? So my parents gave me an ultimatum: you're out of the house unless you go to rehab, right? And they had been working with a counselor in my area because they didn't know what to do. You know, I'd been seeing life coaches at the time. I'd been doing all these things, right? That nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And, you know, I remember seeing a therapist at one point, and she was the first person to actually tell me, because she asked me, you know, what my using patterns were like, right? And I think I downplayed it a lot, but I'll never forget this. She pulled out the DSM-5, right? The book that, you know, the medical book that, I can't remember the acronym, it doesn't matter, but
diagnosis.
Yeah. And she pulled it out and she said, you know, you have alcohol use disorder, and you're addicted to marijuana. You're addicted to cocaine. And she started saying all these things. And that was the first time in my life I ever heard that word, right? Addict, other than movies. And I remember being in denial, right? So my parents didn't know what to do with me, kicked me out of the house. I took the easier, softer way, and I lived in my car for 2 weeks because I wasn't going to go to rehab. You know, I'm from Toronto at that time, Toronto, Canada. At that time, we were living 20 minutes north of Toronto in a subdivision, and they had picked my parents and my counselor had picked a treatment center in Minnesota, which was it was a youth treatment center, right? And I was 23 and I was the oldest person there when I went. So it was exactly what I needed at the time. Didn't want to go, but I remember living in my car for 2 weeks, and I remember, thinking to myself, my friends were all going home at the end of the night and I just wanted to shower. I wanted a bed. I wanted to go home. I was sick of being homeless. I was sick of, not being able to control my drug use. And so finally I agreed. I went to that treatment center. I'll fast forward through it because I think it's more important for me to get current with my addiction now. And so I managed to put together 8 years clean and sober from that treatment center. I didn't relapse once through that whole time. People always ask me, like, how did you do it? You were 23. Like, how did you manage to not have one sip of alcohol and relapse, not have one slip up or anything?
So many pressures at that age, at that core age,
dude.
or a social pressure, and so much of an environment, so many environments you're in. It's just like, here, have a drink, have some cocaine.
Everywhere. And my friends were still using cocaine like recreationally, which is, for me, I can't understand the concept, right? But, and so I can attribute it honestly to saying I came to a point where people were telling me what to do, right? People that had been sober longer than me, people that had professional backgrounds in addiction. And I had enough fighting, right? So I started listening to what people were telling me to do. I took the recommendations, especially when I didn't want to. I ended up staying in Minnesota for 4 months. I lived in a sober house for 2 months. I made some of the best friends of my life there. And I managed to put together 8 years, right? I attended some recovery groups and I built an amazing life, right? So I met my wife, my now wife, in the 8 years of recovery. I was able to buy a house, right? All these things that I never thought I would do, right? I was able to get a job that I wanted. Imposter syndrome was a big thing for me, right? Throughout that time, I really felt like I didn't deserve any of it, but I can attribute it all to recovery, honestly. And the mentors and the people that I had, showing me the path, the way, right? So, I'll fast forward to the 8th year and what happened to lead me to where I am today. So my story is a little bit different than I found my relapse story is a little bit different in that I didn't relapse on my drug of choice for a year. Okay. I can attribute my big relapse at 8 years back to performance enhancing drugs, which is interesting because, I throw this out a lot, steroids, and a lot of guys I know in the recovery have started to dabble with this idea. Right. And, I'll never tell anyone not to do anything or just, be cautious with it. I always say to people, right, is this body dysmorphia, this body image thing. It took me back out. It took me down a darker path. As I said, when we first started, I never thought I would smoke meth, ended up smoking meth by the end of it. All these things, benzos were a part of my story. Like all these things I never touched before. Anything went at one point. So my point with all of that and the steroids is the steroids didn't cause me to relapse, right? That, I posted a video online recently and one of these gym bro dudes commented on it. He's like, "Oh, you're just an idiot. Steroids don't make you like, that's not." And I'm like, dude, you missed the whole point of the video, right? It's nothing external will make me relapse. I've realized that today. There's no external thing short of somebody putting a gun to my head and a bag up to my nose, really, that'll cause me to relapse. I had a secret at that time. And this is what I always try to tell guys that I talk to in early recovery is like, secrets, you're only as sick as your secrets, right? And I found that to be extremely true. I had a secret and I was telling people in my recovery circle 90% of the truth, and I was keeping that 10% of the truth back here, right? I was telling them that I was on TRT with the doctor, which is testosterone replacement therapy, and I was justifying it in my head, right? All these stories, I'm doing it properly, I'm not relapsed, it's not a mood or mind-altering substance. Dangerous stuff, man. Like I never thought I would have relapsed. I think a lot of people, I'll speak for myself. At 8 years, I never thought I would relapse, and I never thought that I would relapse that way, right? But addiction is cunning, baffling, and powerful for me, and patient, right? So I left the back door open and I had a secret. The secret started to pile up. One day I'm shopping online. I'm looking for my steroids, and I start to see Adderall coming up on the websites that I'm buying off of. And I remember saying to myself, like looking at those ads and those classifieds and, people selling shit online. I remember saying to myself, I'll never touch that, right? That would be a relapse. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And what happens? Well, you let your guard down one day and the fuck it starts to come in. And you know what? All of a sudden, addiction comes back on my shoulder, right? I always picture it like the devil and the angel on my shoulder. Addiction pops up and says, you know what, dude? You might have ADHD, right? And that was the honest thought in my head. It was like, you might have ADHD. You've never actually solved this problem before, right? This is, you could be better at work, right? All of these justifications. And that's how my relapse started, right? So now I'm buying Adderall online. I find a way to get on the dark web, which is a whole other crazy fucking part of the internet that people shouldn't be on, right? I'm buying drugs in large quantities and I'm shipping them from Montreal to Canada. And at this point, I'm now committing felonies. I'm shipping in, like I said, and all for personal use, right? And it just led me down this path, man.
How long ago was that when you were doing that?
Yeah. So this would have been, so I'm almost at 11 months again. I'm coming up to a year again in January. So that would have been the end of last year was when it got really bad, right? So the end of 2024 over Christmas, actually. Funny but not so funny story. Christmas Day, I had an intervention, right? I showed up to Christmas Day and I was a mess. And my loved ones, my family sat me down and, they had the typical intervention I found out it wasn't planned because they didn't really know how bad it got, right? But, when someone's in active addiction, we think we're not fooling anyone, but it's when they know you sober for 8 years too, it's so obvious at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a humbling experience for sure, and led me to my third rehab. So at this point in January of this year, I get into my third rehab, and I'm going for 30 days only. Right, the classic, like, I know what I'm doing, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Were you hesitant to go because you had gone through it before, and you're just like,
Yeah.
this is repetitive, it's not going to work, or were you confident that it was going to work?
No, I was confident it was going to work. I had my recovery foundation. I had my foundation out there. I had my recovery friends. I had a solid program that I was just neglecting and I wasn't going back to. And so in my mind was 30 days. I just needed to get clean. I needed to detox. I needed to get my head straight, sleep essentially, right? Because the withdrawals from meth and cocaine is just sleep, right? I just needed to sleep for a week. I remember sitting in the rehab and like they would be teaching a class and I'd be sitting down like this and I would just fall asleep all the time. That was a good experience for me. So when they recommended that I stay for 60 days, the good defiant alcoholic addict that I am, I said no for a long time until, I don't know, call it an act of providence. I'm a spiritual guy. I'm not a religious guy, but I believe in, a power greater than myself, something guiding me. I don't want to say I heard this voice, but there was definitely like a narrative in my head where it was like, dude, maybe you're wrong about how to get sober again. Maybe you should shut up and maybe you should listen to the professionals, the people that, they want the best for you. Right. And so I stayed that extra 30 days. I went to a sober house again, even though I live with my wife, like all these, I talk about humility a lot and I try so hard to practice it because it's when you relapse after multiple years, it's really tough to like not tell yourself that you know what you're doing and I've got this, right? That famous last words I hear guys say all the time. I used to say it too. I've got this. Like, thank you. I'm good. I'll handle it over here. I know what I'm doing. And so the humility really was a big piece for me this time and just doing as was instructed. And today I can honestly say, 11 months in again, almost 11 months in, I have that peace of mind that I've been craving for so long, right? That just, I can breathe, right?
Was it
And I don't
different
need
in getting
substances.
sober from everything in the first time around, like the 8 years you're sober? How much difficult was this? Like being older, more mature, been through it before? Was it pretty difficult from different kinds of drugs as well?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's different timelines, I think. The first, I'll say this, the similarities from this time and then when I was 23 was there's like those 3 months in my experience, 3 or 4 months where I can't stop thinking about drugs, right? I'm thinking about drugs every single day. And the difference, I think, well, I mean, both times, but what got me through that, and I always tell guys this too, and I make videos about it online, is you got to call somebody, right? You got to get that shit out of your head. You got to tell on yourself, right? You got to blow up your spot, as one of my counselors, Dave, always said. And so I did that, right? But it's miserable. Like those first 3 months in my experience were really tough, and, so to answer your question, I had thoughts of like, this should have been easier because I've done it before, but I think it was just as hard. The only difference is, I will say this, the difference is I had a much more supportive community around me this time around, my wife included, because she saw me, she stuck by me on the nights I was crying to her, telling her I didn't want to live this way anymore, right? Like that was a common occurrence in my house until the point where she had to kick me out because I couldn't stop drinking and using, right? And I had that support this time, whereas when I was 23, I think a lot of my friends didn't really know how bad it was. And what do you mean you can't drink anymore? Like, okay, whatever, dude, right?
Yeah, they don't know the
Yeah.
extent of the problem,
Yeah.
especially if they're all using too and they're still young and still going through, still succumbing to all the pressure, and they just don't get it, you know? And I remember that when I was
Yeah.
23 trying to say that I needed to quit, and they're like, "What are you talking about? You just party hard. Who gives a shit?" I'm like, "Actually, I have a problem."
Same. Yeah. I got my DUI at 24, so I lost like all my friends because they were not understanding that I couldn't go out. I was on probation, but I was drinking at home, so I could have went out.
Yeah. 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 I'll say this about, I want to comment on the DUI thing because I've been to rehab in the United States twice now. There's I mean, not funny, but there's a thing that I've noticed with, you guys tend to get a lot more DUIs than we do for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know if there's more cops down there or what, but every time I go to rehab in the US, it's like 9 out of 10 people will have DUIs. And in Canada, it's just not the case. Like, I don't know if we're not getting caught or if we're not, I don't know, but it's funny side note there.
You said every time you've been to rehab in the U.S., is there a big difference in the rehabs in Canada and U.S.?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How is it different?
I mean, so I'm blessed in that I had the support to go to private rehab. In Canada, we have two options. I actually work at one now. I work at a private rehab in Canada. So there's two options in Canada. You have OHIP covered, which is fully funded by the government. You know, long wait lists, months to get in typically, and you have to want to go. You can't call for your son to go in. In the US, it's a lot different because you guys have like insurance companies covering it. That's not typical here. So when you're going to private treatment in Canada, you're spending 20 grand out of pocket, right? And so I've been blessed enough to have the support around me where people pitched in and, we were able to get loans and get financing and stuff like that. But I would say the biggest difference, is there's a lot more rehabs and options in the US, and in Canada, you kind of have like, at least in Toronto and the GTA region where I'm from, you have probably like 5 or 6 that are, top tier, right? And they're governed and licensed by an outside accredited, so that somebody's auditing them and making sure that, the nurses have licenses. And so they're legit, right? Not like what's going on in Florida, I hear.
Hi, I'm in Florida.
Nice.
You're right.
Good recovery down there, though. I will say that there is good recovery.
Yeah, for people who want it.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's like anywhere. There's going to be bad rehabs and people doing it for the wrong reasons, and then there's going to be good ones, right?
Exactly.
I mean, Florida just has a lot of rehabs. That's the difference.
Did you learn in this last time in rehab that you think made the difference, where you think you have the mindset you're going to be sober for long term? Obviously, was there something that just struck you, something that went through your head? You're like, I'm done, never testing anything again.
I mean, I think as we all know, recovery is, at least to me, a self-searching journey, right? It's honest self-appraisal, honest self-examination. So at all 3 of the rehabs, I learned more about myself, right? In the relapse, I learned about myself. I learned about my resentments and how they lead to picking up drinks, and that unfiltered sort of justifiable anger. And so the biggest thing I learned this time, I think, was just how defiant I am, right? Just how much my ego really does affect me and take me down, and how, I think I know the right way a lot of times because I've always done it this way, or somebody told me this, so that's why I always mentioned humility is such an important part. Today's like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong.
That's a huge word. Yeah. Humility. I love
Humility,
that word.
definitely.
So do you think there was any, do you ever look back and think, whether it was the years of use prior to the 8 years sobriety or the relapse, was there anything you think you were numbing personally in order to like cope with things, or like, how are you? Or was there use just mainly like, I know it sounds like it wasn't all social and just for fun. So
Yeah. I mean, I think it started out like that, right? I think a lot of us, I won't speak for everybody, but I mean, we wouldn't have gotten into it if it wasn't doing us some sort of service at first, right? So, for me, stimulants, I would say this, stimulants I'm an outgoing person, right? And I felt that stimulants amplified my personality, and they did at first, I will say, and then, towards the end, it's, I don't know, probably like this much of a window you have where it's like, you're maximizing the potential of the drug, at least in my experience. But
Yes.
I think it allowed me to connect more to other people around me at parties. And I was always a party guy. Now I hate parties, right? But I think I used it to kind of calm the fear of tomorrow, right? The worries of tomorrow. Like whenever I would be high or whenever I would drink, nothing really mattered, right? It's kind of that off switch I found where my brain would just shut off. I was able to escape the moment. I think that would be the biggest thing for me, that why I use drugs.
Yeah. It's like you came to that
Okay.
realization.
Yeah. For confidence a little bit, make you even more confident, be more of the party guy, even more. I know it gets lonely though towards the end.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And then the
Yeah. Cause no one
dopamine
wants to hang out with you.
hang
True.
out with you in the dopamine high, you keep trying to chase it, but you only get so much dopamine from a bump, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
Yeah. And then your levels are so skewed by the end of it, right? That, things that I used to love doing, I didn't like doing anymore. Working out, right? Going for walks, like just no interest in any of that. Yeah. So it is lonely though, for sure. Especially when you gather some time together and people know, like I said before, people know you as the sober guy, and like, 8 years in recovery, people they knew me as the guy that couldn't drink, right? Or, they thought I couldn't drink. I can drink. I always try to make that distinction. I can drink whenever I want, right? I'm choosing not to today because I don't want to go down that path. But somebody corrected me that very early on in Hazelden, in the treatment center I went to in Minnesota. People used to say I can't drink, right? Oh, I can't drink anymore. It's like, no, dude, you can go to the bar right now. After this podcast is done, I can go to the bar downstairs and get hammered if I wanted to, right? I'm choosing not to because I choose peace of mind today, right?
Yeah. No,
Right.
well said.
I like that.
Rachel, do you have any questions?
So I mean, from the time so you said you were looking for your testosterone and then you found the Adderall and then you convinced yourself that you have ADHD and then you went from there. So you went from doing Adderall and then it went right back into even more hardcore drugs like the coke, and that was your relapse?
Yeah. And then, so by the end of it, I was buying the red Adderall pills, which I now know, on the dark web. Everything was on the dark web. So, it was meth in a pill essentially. Right. And then I was buying Xanax and all the other things to come down because I would get too high and I wouldn't be able to sleep and I needed to come down. And then if anyone knows the benzo blackouts, when you're using a lot of stimulants and then you take benzos, the stimulants wear off and the benzos just hit you like a truck. Right. So I've had many a time where I was driving on the highway going God knows where, and I would wake up in a blackout and how the fuck did I get here? Right? Scary, scary stuff. Not sleeping for days at a time. But yeah, so I don't, God knows what I was doing from the guys I was buying from. I'm grateful today that none of them, at least I don't think, were laced with fentanyl, right? I had many chances to actually, it's funny. I was in rehab in the third time and we're watching the news one day and, this headline comes up that says, dark web Montreal guy gets busted for fake Xanax. And I'm like, look, I bought off that guy. Like that was the dude I bought from. Right. And because it had fentanyl in it and scary, scary shit. Right. So
Yeah, it is.
See?
I'm grateful to be alive today.
Yeah. I
Yes.
lost my little sister to bad fentanyl, so it's
Fuck. I'm
it's a
sorry to hear
dangerous
that. Bro.
thing. Oh, it's all right. I think I'm gonna be doing a solo episode soon, talking about her actually, probably maybe in the next couple of days. So, but yeah, fentanyl is dangerous. I just hear about people just dying from it all the time, and they think sometimes they're buying another drug, but fentanyl's in it and it kills them, and they're not used to it
Yeah.
or don't have any tolerance. So, it's pretty frightening. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
so how long into your recovery did you start getting into working at a recovery center? It looks like you have a podcast. So how did you start actively using what you've learned in recovery?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Recovering
good.
outlaw.
Yeah. It's a good segue. So I worked in corporate in those 8 years, right? I moved my way up, I made good money. but there was something missing, right? I didn't like working that job. I was good at it, but it wasn't, I don't mean to sound all cheesy and woo woo, but I truly believe this stuff is like, I think everyone has a calling, right? And so when I was in this third rehab, one of the counselors there kind of gave this profound speech about how he became a counselor, and he's not an addict himself, right? And he told this story about how Vince, I love the guy to death. He helped me so much. He told this story about how he was a pastor for a long time at a church, and he hated it. He hated it. He hated it so much that he would cry. He was young when he started, 16, 17. He would cry after he would give his sermons, and people loved him. He was so good at it. But every night he would go home and he was crying. And he told the story about how he ended up at a hospital one day in a head trauma ward, and how it, just these things started to line up where it pushed him into the path of helping recovering addicts. And the way he delivered the speech in the day, I guess I was ready to hear the message, right? But something clicked inside where I was like, you know what? I love recovery. I love working with and talking to new guys and people coming in. And it just comes natural to me, right? Like I really do enjoy it, and I love podcasts. And there was another counselor there that had his own podcast, and he kind of motivated me to get it started. And so I did it, me and another guy. He's not doing it with me anymore. He's moved on to other things, but we started doing it. And I just love it. And, as I'm sure it's a lot of work. Like, it is a lot of work. It's very taxing to do these, scheduling and interviews. But I meet the coolest people, man. And I learn so much from them. Even people that aren't in recovery. Like, I interview loved ones of addicts, people that have dealt with trauma and loss. And I learn so much. I went back to school. I'm currently in school to become an addictions counselor. I'm almost done that. And then I got a job at a rehab from a friend of mine in recovery who owns a treatment center. And I'm on the admission side right now. So I help get people in. I talk to them when they're at their worst. And I don't know, it comes natural to me. I love doing it, man.
Yeah, and that initial phone call that you hear, you're hearing somebody who's very broken in a very low place, and you gotta be so encouraging. You gotta flip that switch and just, tell them, hey, because the results are going to be incredible, but it's a frightening thing stepping foot in that door.
It is.
Yeah.
And you know what? I take it for granted sometimes, man. I forget sometimes just how hard it was to make that step into rehab, right? Like it's extremely hard. I've done it 3 times.
It took me so many rock bottoms to decide to finally, like, okay, clearly I can't do this on my own, and I finally just like surrendered is kind of what the best word would be. And I just said, all right, I need to go the extra mile to save my life, or else I'm gone next time this happens, So it is a huge step to make. But I remember that first phone call I made. I was in the hospital and I talked to the girl in admissions, and I just, something about her tone and like her, I felt very invited and welcome, and not it was, so that. What you're doing is incredibly significant.
Yes.
Like,
Thank you.
Definitely. Definitely. I can't wait to do that actually one day.
yeah, exactly.
I'm studying the same thing.
Nice.
Yes.
So can you describe kind of what a 24-hour period looks like right now for you then? As far as, it sounds like you're staying busy.
Yeah, good question. First thing I do every morning when I wake up is I pray and journal and meditate to the best of my ability. I started doing this thing recently where I'll set aside time, and they call them morning pages. I just journal out 3 pages every morning of whatever is on my mind, and that really helps me for like creativity, making videos, making podcasts, and it also just clears my head, right? It clears my head of the shit that I'm worried about. Finances is a big one for me right now that constantly is coming up. The fear of financial insecurity. I racked up a huge tab in this last relapse, staying at the most expensive hotels. And so there's a lot of work to be done, but it's like one thing at a time, right? You get back and, you wake up one day and you've done the work, you've prayed about it, you've meditated, you've journaled, and the fear starts to like get less and less, right? And you're like, you know what? It's not, sure. These things just start to come back, right? And so like, I think a lot of people, at least in my experience, every time I've relapsed, it was because I had a secret, but also because, these fears just got too big, right? And I didn't push through them. I didn't talk about them. And so, my advice to people in early recovery all the time is like, just get through those days. Like, just get to bed sober today, right? Like, I had to go 15 minutes at a time in early recovery, where I was like planning out my 15 minutes. Like, I'm just gonna, okay, the next 15 minutes I'm not gonna drink. The next 15 minutes I'm not gonna drink. I'm not gonna call my dealer, and that really helped me. So, after that, I do work around. I work from home, right? So I'm in school 3 days a week, and then I try to be of service, right? So I work with guys that are trying to get sober, or that have some time, that have asked me to sit down with them for coffee every once in a while. And I try to carry the message, because when I'm in someone else's shit, I'm not in my shit, right? I'm outside of my
Right.
head, and I can be of service.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's pretty, there's no 2 days alike, and I do want to go back to work, and I'm not a school guy. It's really hard for me to do the school stuff and get motivated for it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. You have to do it to achieve the goal you want to achieve, right?
Exactly.
Yes, definitely.
Well said.
I have a question. What's something in sobriety that you had to face that scared you?
I would say probably, I can't, this is jumping in my head right now, so it must be this, but without going into too much detail about it, I had to make an amends to somebody close to me that was really hard. Probably the most difficult thing I've ever done. Like, I had to apologize and own
Yeah.
my side of it, because it would have killed me, right? I know it would have killed me. Like, that's another thing, is like the guilt and shame of it. And so doing that was probably, I would say, as of today, right? I know life is going to get harder. I'm not naive of that. I've been in recovery long enough to know that shit happens. I've seen people get through, really tough situations. Here's another one, actually, that's more recent, I would say, because that happened early on, and that was definitely the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But, cancer diagnoses, right, of people close to me, like, it's coming up more than once. And so I'm a fixer, right? And I think a lot of people in recovery can relate to this. Like, whenever someone's going through trauma close to you, you want to fix it, right? And there's nothing you can do other than just show up, right? So I've had a hard time, I would say, showing up, just being there for people and shutting up, right? Just undivided attention, of not trying to give them advice, not trying to fix their situation, not trying to heal their pain, but just sit and be there. So I would say that, like, showing up and being there for people when they're going through trauma and going through hard things.
Good
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, for me, I was just scared of loneliness. Honestly, all of my drinking and drug use, really relied on breaking me out of my shell and being social and hanging out with people, trying to be the life of the party. And I was just scared that the day I got out of treatment, I was just going to be alone. Honestly, I didn't think I would have friends. And then, I discovered some meetings. I started keeping in touch with people from treatment, and I just kind of was like, actually, no, I do have a community of a lot of good people now, and I feel like my friendships are even more genuine than they ever were. I just that loneliness feeling really went away over the last, 6-7 months or whatever. I was like, nope, this is
Mhm.
where I want to be. So,
Yeah.
how about you, Rachel?
For me, I didn't go to rehab. I'm not sure still to this day. Well, one, it's because I'm a mother and I really had no help. Two, I think at the moment I was just in denial and I thought I could just cold turkey it, which I did. Do not recommend that, but I did. My drug of choice was alcohol, mainly, pretty much. I mean, I was doing benzos heavily with it, so I was
Yeah.
black all the time. But for me, it was more of, yes, being lonely because I had lost all of my relationships due to drinking and my behavior. So my friend was the bottle of wine sitting on my nightstand while I was in my room for hours on end. That was my friend. The bottles, not bottle. And from there, I was also afraid of literally learning who I was because I was just sleeping all the time and I was unhealthy and I was just, sick. So I was just like, I don't even know like, what am I going to do? The boredom, the loneliness. Like, what am I supposed to do if I'm not drinking? Like, that was the thought process right before quitting. Like, I'm gonna be so bored, I'm gonna be so lonely, and I was afraid of it. Low key, I was afraid of it. That's what it was. And then once you face it, you're like, "Oh, wow, I'm a great fucking person. I
Hmm.
wasted so much time." You know? You get rid of one
Yeah,
substance and you gain everything, really. I say it all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot of time back too. I've noticed, right? That's like the biggest shift is like when you get sober, there's so much time now that it's really hard to fill it. And since I've been doing the social media and podcast thing, what you just said, Rachel, is by far I would think, and what I see, the most shared fear of people is boredom in recovery. How am I going to have fun again? Right. And what I always say to that, and you mentioned it briefly, is like your idea of fun kind of changes, right? The people you hang around with, like you said, Ryan, it changes. Your priorities change. You start to lose friends that you didn't have anything in common besides alcohol with, right? It just takes time. It takes time to kind of find yourself and find your passions again, right? And so that's the hard part, is like, who am I? What do I like doing? I don't even know what I like doing. I was doing drugs for so long. What do I like doing? I don't even know.
Yeah. You
I
start to
didn't.
learn about yourself, and there's like that quote that says, like, when you get sober, you become who you're truly meant to be, and it's like, wow, I like myself so much more now than I did before I even
Mhm.
started using, because it's like, I think all those obstacles and challenges I had to face doing it shaped me into who I am today. And I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, life is just better. It's easier. And like you said, there's so much more time in the day now. It's like sometimes I get overwhelmed not knowing, oh, what could I do next? I have to
Yeah.
write things down
No,
on a
like
list.
literally. Yes, I wake up at 5 a.m. So like literally, yes.
Such a long day when you're like not
I'm like,
hungover,
what's going
sleeping half the
on?
way through.
At
Yeah,
11
usually
a.m., I'm like,
it's
I did everything.
Everything's done.
No, I wouldn't be the badass woman I am today without stopping all that drinking. I would not be this
exactly.
badass woman I am today. I wouldn't have the confidence that I have today. I wouldn't have gotten into the gym the way I am now. I'm pretty fucking badass at that too. And I'm saying it with confidence because I would have never done this almost 2 years ago. And if I could talk to that girl, if I could talk to that woman, she would be in shock, you know? So
Yeah, it's a
just look
great
at us,
point.
doing our thing.
Anthony, what would you tell your old self when you were in the
Yeah.
midst of addiction? What would you say to yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I ask that one a lot. I always laugh too, because it's like there's nothing really that I would have listened to, because
Right.
you can't tell me shit, right? But it is a good question, because I think just hold on is coming to mind, right? Like, hold on. I think early on there's so much fear of tomorrow and the future, and how am I not going to drink at my wedding? And that was a huge one for me, right? Just hold on. You often hear, don't leave before the miracle happens, right? And I've found this whole experience to be a miracle. I see miracles every day. I hear stories of people, what they've been through, and recovery, it really is a miracle. I don't, like I said, I have a choice whether I drink or not today. I have a choice whether I get back into drugs or not today. And I didn't have that for a long time. I had to use, I had to, right? I
Yeah,
had to drink.
yeah. No, very well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, that got me
Yeah.
teary-eyed. I would say the
Do
same
you
thing
ever,
too.
since we were kind of talking about it a second ago, do you ever kind of look back and do you regret any of the stuff that happens, or are you kind of glad it happened because it shaped you to the guy you are today?
Yeah, that's a good one too. Um, you always hear people like, I don't regret anything. I don't regret, like, I learned all this. And, um, I don't know. I really wish I didn't put my wife through a lot of the stuff that I did. There was a lot of stuff that she didn't deserve to have to go through and sit through. And it makes me really emotional to think about it, because there was a lot of nights on the couch where she would just lay with me, and like, I was just broken again. This like dilemma of, I need to quit, but I don't want to stop, right? That was the big thing, is like, I need to quit, but I don't want to stop. And so, yeah, I guess I wish I really didn't have to put my family, my parents, my sister, and my wife through that relapse, because, up until that point, my wife had never seen me touch a drink, right? And I was happy. I was happy, joyous, and free. I honestly was, every single day. Like, the little things didn't bother me. It's because I had a good recovery program and support networks. I would say that, right? The relapse definitely taught me more about myself and how I have lost my right to chemical peace of mind. That was the big learning. I cannot safely use one of any mood or mind altering substances, like even steroids, even Ozempic, right? I've done Ozempic too. Like I cannot safely do any of that because it just snowballs into lies and manipulation and then addiction. And I'm back using meth again.
Yeah,
Wow.
it all catalyzes a bunch of other problems, and it's just it's a gateway to a lot of things. So that's why like I'm kind of like paranoid about even drinking like beer with 0.5% in it. You know, it's called NA beer, but sometimes I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't know, I shouldn't do this. You know, I feel like guilty or whatever. But I
Wait,
think to each
NA
their own
beer
and how
has
they go.
alcohol?
Some NA beer does, I think, like
Don't tell me that.
0.5%. And some of them have zero,
I
but
mean,
it depends. You have to
I
look
didn't
at the
like it
label.
though. I mean, I wasn't drinking for taste, let's be honest. Like I was not drinking beer because I liked it. It made me bloated as hell. So an NA beer, I took a few sips because I was like, let me try it. And I was like, so I dropped it. But if there's any alcohol in that, I
Yeah,
hope not.
exactly.
I mean, this is another interesting topic too. I think again, since going on social media, you start to realize like the big debate topics. One of them, addiction's not a disease and like all this shit that just really, I get really fired up about, but it doesn't matter because, if somebody believes that, let them believe it, live and let live, right? I have a hard time with that. But the non-alcoholic thing, you'll hear one side say, non-alcoholic beverages are for non-alcoholics, right? And then there's this whole new wave of people coming up that are like, I just enjoy the taste of a non-alcoholic beverage, whatever it be, right? And I think so for me, I don't have NA beer, but just because I never liked beer and it tastes too close to me that it's like, I don't want to get the wheels spinning.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think I'm not the person that'll sit here and say, nobody should be having it, and I don't care, right? Like, here's my thing. If my motive is good behind it, right? If I have the right motive. So if I'm drinking an NA beer at a bar because I'm scared people are going to judge me and I'm worried about fitting in, for me, that's a problem. Like, I need to check that. I need to realize that. But if I'm just enjoying it because I'm out with my wife and, it looks good on the menu, like I'll order a mocktail every now and then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you. Yeah, if you have the right intentions, it's okay. If you have the wrong intentions because you're doing it to, fill the insecurities with people around you and stuff, then that's probably not right. So, yeah. And
Mocktails
yeah, I
are
mean, I've
pricey
caught myself
usually
ordering
sometimes.
mocktails. Yeah, I've caught myself ordering mocktails at times or having like some kind of drink that looks like a drink just to shut people up or not ask me if I want a drink. But
Yeah.
I realize the longer I'm sober, the more I'm in those situations, nobody seems to really give a shit.
They're too busy thinking about their own drinking.
Exactly. So it's like, I don't know. Those are things I overthought before I got sober. I'm like, how am I going to
Mm-hmm.
handle this? I'm like,
Yeah.
nobody cares. I'm never
Same
watching
thing.
anybody else and counting their drinks.
Yeah.
I can relate.
To me, it's just like, I got to be honest with myself. That's it. Right. I think we all, when you come into recovery and you get some time and you do some of the work, you really start to know when things feel off, right? Like when I'm doing something wrong, I know I'm doing something wrong. And if I'm telling myself that, oh no, it's fine, just keep going, ignore that gut feeling, that's when I start to question it and be like, well, maybe this isn't good for me, right? That's what I try to do anyways.
Yeah. So this is a last question for me. Since you're in recovery admissions and stuff, like, and this kind of goes with a question I usually ask our guests, but like, what do you tell somebody that is, say on the phone, they're contemplating getting sober, they're on the fence about it, not sure. How do you explain to them, this is what you need to do, or what advice do you give?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the benefits of having lived experience and having the job that I have is I kind of know what not to say, right? And I would say the biggest thing, I mean, so our family members and loved ones spend a lot of time telling us not to drink, right? If they're not getting professional help, and that's everyone's first reaction is like, you got to get sober. You got to clean your life up. You got to do, right? All these things. And that doesn't do well with us in my experience. I don't like being told what to do, right? So I kind of paint the picture for a lot of people. And I typically ask like motivational interviewing questions, which is a modality that I like, where it's like open-ended questions of what would happen if you went into rehab tomorrow? Like, honestly, think about this for a second. What is the worst case scenario If you decided somebody paid for it, like, don't worry about the money, forget about all those outside factors. If you had a spot in a rehab and you started tomorrow, what's the worst thing that would happen? And then alternatively, what is the worst thing that would happen if you didn't go into that bed tomorrow, right? Jails, institutions, death. And be honest with yourself, man. Be honest with yourself. Where do we end up? 6 feet under, right? Unfortunately, we end up in hospitals. We end up in jail. Those are the three. It's only a matter of time in my experience. That's what I've been doing this for 10 years. It ends up the same thing. Or some people can moderate and, figure it out. But in my experience, if you are a true addict and a true alcoholic and not just a heavy drinker, and if you're calling into a rehab, chances are you are. If you're looking on the internet, if you're thinking about your drinking and you're concerned about how much you drink, chances are you're an alcoholic or, may have a problem with alcohol. I'll never call anybody that. But so I think it's just like, what's the worst thing that would happen?
Kind of like first thought wrong concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Mhm.
Rachel,
I
do you have
too.
any other questions for Anthony?
It's not really a question, but well, it is kind of a question. But for the listeners out there that are listening, what piece of advice that, for the people who are barely hanging on, what would you tell them?
Yeah. I think right now, as of today, what's coming up a lot for me, and this is what saved my ass from relapse again, is whatever you're going through, find one person in your life. Just find one person that you can trust, that you think won't judge you. Find one person, whether they're sober in recovery or not, and just fucking tell them everything. Whether it's a therapist, tell them what you're thinking about, what you're going through. Chances are they've either gone through it or they've experienced something similar or the similar feeling. And if they love you and if they're close to you, they're not going to judge you. Right. But you have to, in my experience, I have to get this stuff out, because if it stays in here, it just festers and it's negative thought loop after negative thought loop. And now I'm a piece of shit because I'm thinking about drinking all the time, and boom, I'm off to the races. Right.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining the show the day before Thanksgiving, Anthony. Really appreciate it. I mean, you got a lot of good opinion and a lot of very thoughtful responses to some good questions. So we really appreciate you. Would you like to throw your name of your podcast and your Instagram up for the
sure. So you guys can all find me at Recovering Out Loud Podcast. So available on every platform, videos on Spotify. We're also on YouTube, and then on social media, mainly Instagram. I stopped doing TikTok just because I didn't like the algorithm, but Instagram is at Recovering Out Loud Pod. And I'll say this too. I'm excited for football tomorrow. I love American Thanksgiving. They show football here and I stay home and I just eat food by myself. So it's great because we don't celebrate at the same time.
You guys celebrate like in October or something, right?
Yeah. It's been passed for a while now. So I'm excited about tomorrow.
Awesome. No, I'm a big NFL fan, so I'll be doing the same. That's awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show, man. Really appreciate you.
Bless you. Thanks, guys.
Rock Bottom with Ryan. No bullshit, just recovery.